Hello, everybody. Great to be with you. I'm here with Chris Warnock, who is a friend of mine and a lay Zen priest and a student of mine as well. Chris has been with me probably 2.5 years, something like that. He woke up in our initial awakening session and has been clearing admirably ever since. And we're going to find out a little bit about that. So, Chris, why don't you start us out? Everybody wants to know. Tell us about your awakening first, if you would.
It's interesting because I found you through your book, Beyond Recovery. And because I had a tremendous amount of respect for 12-step. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a great spiritual technique. Mm-hmm. It's indigenous American. And so I started looking around and I got frustrated because who are the enlightened people? Where are the awakened people? So I started saying, I know it didn't just happen 2,000 years ago. There must be people now that actually have woken up that are enlightened right now. So I started looking around. And then on Amazon, I got a suggestion to Beyond Recovery. And so I'm like, oh, this looks great. So I read it and I was like, oh, this is great stuff. And I looked at your website and you said you could wake people up. And I'm like, well, okay. I thought, what the heck? Whatever.
Let's try this food.
Exactly. Well, I'm like, what, you say you can. So, that's the thing.
So there was some substance there.
It's funny because it's like, I think we were talking about, I remember talking about like Hawaii. I've never been to Hawaii.
Yeah.
But it makes sense to me. And people I trust tell me about it. And that's what I thought about your stuff, because it's like what you're telling me was no different from what I read in the sources.
Yeah.
In the Zen tradition that I was in.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, well, that's a really good start.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good way to kind of get, a basic orientation. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I came and did the awakening.
So, and was your awakening like explosive, or was it like just sort of ordinary, where you just, can you remember?
It's a little weird because I'm not, the one speaking now isn't really there. So it's a little bit of a weird thing to talk about. You got to the point where you talked about the self and you say like, it was like an imaginary friend. And I just started laughing.
Yes. Right.
Or no, rather, really what happened is that I disappeared and that all this laughing manifested.
That's right.
I really wanted to be accurate about it.
Yeah, that was so that would have been at the Zen dog story. I mean, about the invisible dog story.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Right. Yeah. Okay, good. So which is just that's just one of the it's just a technique, or it's really just a story, but it has that story tends to trigger insight in other people, right? So tell me about since then. What's been going on since then? And you were in Zen prior to this for a long time, correct?
Well, I started Zen. It was interesting. We moved to Iowa City, where my wife grew up.
From where?
From Washington, D.C. And, the city was fun when we were young.
Yeah.
But the older you get, the dirtier and noisier, and it's very expensive to live there.
And you were both lawyers in Washington, D.C.
Right, exactly. And Kathleen we kind of went new agey a little bit. Mm-hmm. And, but we moved to Iowa City, and and down the street from us, there's a Zen center.
Yeah.
So that was kind of, and people say, well, how did you come to Zen expecting some big, and I'm like, well, there was a Zen center down the street. And so my wife started going there, and I started going as well. And we sat. Mm-hmm. And, the sitting was willingness. Mm-hmm. Just previous, there's a kind of a Buddha's birthday or Buddha's enlightenment in December. And they do a lot of sitting in Japan for that. So I started sitting 40 minutes in the morning and 40 minutes in the evening every single day after that, up until that April awakening session. And I think the sitting was mostly just, okay, I'm willing.
Yeah. So that December birthday you're talking about, that's the celebration of the Buddha's enlightenment, is that right?
Right, exactly. It's called, in Japanese, called Rahatsu.
Yeah, Rahatsu. Right.
Yeah. And so they tend to go a little overboard and like sit, 18 hours a day or something. I actually did that at there's a Zen monastery up in northeast Iowa.
Yeah.
And, you know, I had asked this priest at the Zen center, oh, should I do this? She's like, sure, great, go ahead. And she didn't tell me how absolutely grueling it was, because it was insane amount of sitting 7 days in a row. And I really fell apart during that. That was a really traumatic experience for me.
Right.
Kind of soured me a little bit on that kill yourself method.
Yeah, right. So,
I didn't wake up either.
Which is fascinating.
No, I mean, that didn't wake me up. None of the stuff woke me up.
Right. Exactly. So what do you, since you've been a student of Zen and now you've been a student of the living method for 2.5 years, so what do you see about what we're doing here? That's meaning the living method. What is that different? What do you see the difference between that and Zen, or that and old Zen, present Zen, whatever you want to?
This is Zen. This is the essence of Zen. If you read the old sources, if you read the stuff, you don't have to go back that far, 17th century even. You know, what you've got is an interaction like a koan.
Mm-hmm.
A koan is a record of an interaction between a master and a disciple, or two enlightened people.
Mm-hmm.
And there's usually a pointing by the master.
Mm-hmm.
And then the student, or the person who's being tested, so to speak, you know, boom, you know, they either wake up or they manifest, they get it.
Yes.
And that's so what you have is you have to have an enlightened person. You have to have a person who's willing to be enlightened. And then there's a spark.
Yes. Yes. So
and
I
that connects.
Put that, because you were talking about that your sitting was willingness, and you said, you know, you have to have a person that's willing to be enlightened. And that's, you know, what I always say is that you have to have, is that the only thing I need in order to help somebody wake up is I got to have somebody who's willing to tell themselves the truth when they're presented with it. Right? Which is
right.
Which is that same thing as the willingness to live as awakeness.
I was thinking about it, you know, those Lipizzaner horses, they're incredibly well trained, and they do the dressage, which is this incredible series of, and the way those horses are is they're waiting and prepared for the rider, whatever the rider wants them to do. I mean, they're sitting in a state of readiness, prepared to receive whatever instruction that they get and to go with it wholeheartedly. And that's the attitude that if you want to wake up easily, or you want to wake up at all, probably that's the attitude you have to take. And if you're sort of sitting there resisting and like, okay, Fred's going to drag me into this.
Yes. Right.
It's not going to work probably.
I remember Eckhart Tolle talking about years ago, one of the things that he said many things that really caught my attention, but one of the things that caught my attention was the fact that he was talking about that this attitude, which was more or less like a cat watching a mouse hole.
That's very Zen. That's
very Zen.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the cat, it will wait.
Yes.
He's perfectly happy to sit there.
That's right.
And he's not sitting there going, damn it, where's that mouse? God damn it, I'm sitting here and it just sits there. On the other hand, he's very intent. There's nothing more important to him than waiting for that mouse.
That's right.
He's perfectly willing to wait.
Yeah, that's right.
But you know what?
What?
You can't force yourself to be that way.
Yeah, that's right. We talked about this Sunday, didn't we? Yeah, that you can't make it happen. So when I talk about that, it always sounds like that. What I mean is that personally, you got to be willing to tell yourself the truth when you hear it. But there's no person there. There's no person, there's no character there. So I can't mean that personally. What I'm really talking about is that awakeness has to be ready to drop the Chris story or the Fred story or the Bob story or whatever it is. That awakeness has to be willing to drop that story long enough to recognize itself. And then the tricky part is it's not that difficult to recognize ourselves. We think it is, and we've been taught that it is, but it really is not. and we're taught that way less now, but we're still taught that it's difficult overall. But it's what we have to do after we recognize this, and this is the tricky part, is that we have to accept this. Yes? We have to accept our true nature. We have to see our true nature, then we have to accept it.
The weird thing about it is that you can easily get into this infinite regression of, okay, I dropped the character, and then there's this other person that's awareness. This awareness person, that's an I. That's somehow not the unit, but it's still an I out there. And that's what's strange, is that the language, we're forced to say it that way.
Yes.
But that's not really what's happening.
Right. Exactly.
If you jump to another person, then you're lost.
Yeah. The thing that people have to remember when they're listening to my videos, or they're watching, they're reading a post, or they're no matter what it is that I'm doing, or any other teacher for that matter, is that all of us are liars. Right? I always say that I was a liar all my life, and nothing's changed, right? Because I can't tell you the truth. The best I can do is tell the very best lie that I can, so that I can get you close enough that the spark may jump, right? That it's seen, that it's taken up on the other side. But I've seen time and again, like this method, when I say let's understand something, there's no teacher here. I know you know that, right? There's no teacher, there's no student either. So I had a conversation day before yesterday with one of my friends, and he's quite awake in Wales, and he wrote me later, and he said, I love our conversations. He said, because there's no real sense of, there's no role playing in terms of I'm the student and you're the teacher. And I wrote him back. I said, no, there's just a warm, comfortable feeling as two dogs bark at the moon. and he got that completely. Oh boy, that's what we were doing. I mean, because we're and I wrote him back and I said, yes, it was really nice not talking to you about what we were. It's absurd, but there it is. Yes.
At the satsang on Sunday, I had the strangest feeling that when you were talking, that I don't know, not exactly I was talking, but it was somehow coming from me.
Sure. It was.
It was interesting to have that sensation, because you can have the idea. It's nice to have these ideas. Ideas are nice. I was thinking about that, all the reading, all the preparation, all this stuff orients you.
Yeah.
Where are you? It's like having a compass, okay? It's having GPS.
Yeah.
Where are you?
Yeah.
But that's all it does. It doesn't get you anywhere. It just tells you where you are now.
Yes. That's right.
And it's useful. That's you. If you're in a fog, if you have no idea where you are or what's going on,
right,
that's not good. But if all you do is tremendous amounts of information, well, like I said, you're at 49 west longitude, 69 north. Okay, great.
So the funny thing is that that same thing works for when we're having any talk actually. Is that whenever I'm having any talk with any student, even this one, right? It just because that's what happens is that there's like I can see that there's that you're brightly awake today, right? That there's a brightness there, right there on the surface, everything. But I'm always watching for that, and I don't even mean to be doing it. It's just that there's always a watching to take the temperature of that person, because I'm trying to do what you just talked about, which is find out where the student is. And then you tune them. And then you tune it. You're calibrating. You're going in and you're doing all these little calibrations. Yes. Because I know there's no question. I know where they want to go, so to speak. So I know where you want to go. Right. That's exactly right. So I know where I want to go, and even through that body. Yeah. And so it's a matter of, once I figure out where you are, then it's breadcrumbs, right? But the funny thing is, and you've seen this before, but not everybody that watches this will have seen it before, is that even though I'm trying to figure out where you are, it's a really precise thing, because where you are will always be some variation of being in the bubble of self-reflection. Yes?
Yeah.
Every student I've ever had has come to me in the bubble of self-reflection and wanted me, but they don't know they're in the bubble of reflection, because what happens is that a student that I've never met comes to me, or maybe it's a student that I have met that's even had an awakening before, but they're not brightly awake right now. But particularly with like people in their first, they're in their awakening session or something, and and what comes to me really is that, the character comes to me in search of enlightenment. And I remember so well what that was like. Fred I can't wait till Fred's awake, right? Until Fred's enlightened, because I can see where that's really going to work out nicely for Fred. Because then, maybe then I'll get some money and girls. I know this thing that's going to pay off for Fred in the long run. And so the character comes to be in the idea that it wants to be woken up so that it can then be an awake character. The problem being is that you can have present conscious awakeness, or you can have the appearance of a character, but you can't have both at the same time. You can have one or the other, but the presence of either one guarantees the absence of the other. Because in conscious awakeness, they're seeing there's no character, right?
Right.
In the character, and on the other side of that, there's the character that just can't figure out, why can't I wake up? I'm right on the edge. Yeah. And even when there's tremendous contact, even when there's been an awakening through that unit, if you will, however you want to put it, we can regress, we can still miss it. And sometimes that we can be shocked out of that. We can be, and other times you can't get somebody out of there with a blowtorch. Right?
Well, and that's the thing I was just thinking was that what the character can do is to try to be willing, to be willing to be led.
Yes.
And if you say, it's funny, like in a satsang or like in a waking session, you start asking people questions, and they don't answer the question. And I'm not in court. It's like, Your Honor, direct the witness to answer yes or no.
Yes.
Essentially, do it. Follow the directions of the teacher.
I get a fair amount of that in awakening sessions too, which usually means that I'll ask them a second question once I realize the first question is not going to pop out. First answer is not going to pop out. Then I'm going to ask them a second, maybe even a third question before they actually have a chance to do much, because because what's happening over there is there's thinking going on.
You need to process them. They need to get with it's like a multiple set of questions. I can see that now. It's sort of like you go, it's like with closing the sales, you go, yes, 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 yes. And then you want to buy, yes.
Right. Exactly.
You're closing the sale, so to speak.
And and the funny thing is, we got to remember that I spent years as a car salesman, right? And it's closed the deal, right? And I spent that in my own estimation, because I can't, certainly I didn't earn this position. I mean, not that there's anyone here to earn or not earn it, but as far we look at the karma of this unit, you can't find anything that would indicate that it's going to be a spiritual teacher. So the way I look at it, frankly, is that this is just sort of thinking, but is that there were sets. It's not about earning it or deserving it or whatever. It's about there was a certain set of qualities that just arose in tandem with each other, or in coordination with each other, and actually not even coordination, but at some point they were there, which in this case because I had spent years as a salesman, and particularly years as a car salesman, which everybody, we can figure out about, the honesty was something that was rather slipshod in that occupation. But I was never out, but you're out to reach agreement nonetheless. punch, not so much to slam as it is to reach agreement.
I was going to say, see, the problem with the idea of a teacher is they give you information.
Yes.
So what you're doing is you're sitting there and you're back from it and you're receiving information and you'll analyze it and you'll think about it. Salesman, though, the problem with sales is you got to get them over the hump. It's an emotional thing.
Yeah.
It's not really a logical thing with people.
No.
I mean, you can use logical, you can do that pros and cons thing, but essentially what you're trying to do is guide them over that hump. So actually being a salesman, plus it's not so damn holy.
That's right. And
it's nice. That's a nice way to think. I'm a spiritual salesman.
Yeah.
It's nice.
and probably quite like that. But Betsy says, that Betsy sometimes says, well, you're just the personal trainer to the awakeners. Right?
That's beautiful. That's beautiful too.
Yeah. And I see that, and I say, and I've actually been with students where I brought that up, and I've said, so I can give you the pep talk, but you've got to do the push-ups, right?
Exactly.
And that is the truth. Is that it doesn't make any difference that there's no one there and nothing to do. I get all that. That's true as far as it goes. Unfortunately, it just doesn't go quite far enough. Ultimately, there still has to be that willingness.
We got to work through the forms in front of us.
Yeah.
If you want, you got to do something.
And the willingness doesn't come from the individual, but it comes through the individual.
Yeah, right.
And
it's probably a patterning that's there, and a combination of that patterning and awareness. Because awareness always likes to wake up.
Yeah, it always likes to wake up unless it doesn't.
Exactly. When it's not. Yeah, exactly. It likes to wake up. It likes to go to sleep. It's happy to.
It likes to. Because there is. I've had a couple of examples in the last month where with people that I've seen who've been awake. There's been awakeness functioning, conscious awakeness functioning through that body. Let's be sure to get it just right, non-dually correct. In other words, there have been people who've woken up with me prior to this. I've seen that awakeness there. I've listened to them, whatever, and then it slipped. And it's just, in other words, there's been unit overwhelm. There's been circumstances, or God forbid, there's been too much collective non-dual knowledge that actually can work against you, typically does work against you, instead of working for you until you're after you're awake, and then there's context. But when you get with these folks who have woken up prior, it can be very difficult. I don't even know what we're talking about. I can't remember, but
the way awareness falls asleep again.
Okay,
it likes
so
to fall asleep.
It loves to sit right on the. Thank you so much. It loves to sit right on the edge of its seat. Right?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Oh,
is he gonna wake up or is he not? It's the drama is there. I mean, it's the highest drama there is. Is he gonna wake up? Is he not gonna wake up? Is he gonna wake up right now? And it's he's gonna wake up right now, or is it not gonna be heard? And it's like, and now a word from our sponsor. It's just high drama, and it just the whole point of being here is to ride that roller coaster, is for pure subjectivity to experience itself objectively. And what greater objective experience is there that? Is it going to wake up or not? So it loves to wake up, except for when it doesn't, which is when it loves to not wake up, right? And this makes it sound very entity driven, and because you can't use language very effectively that doesn't sound entity driven without really going into a bunch of holy schmoly, right? Which is, well, that emptiness is, doing this and that and the other. It's just easier to say that to personify awakeness, which is absolutely incorrect.
The thing is that if you're speaking to the seeker or the unawakened, they're not going to get it whenever you say. And if you're speaking to awakened mind, because I've been doing that, I've been going back and reading stuff and going, oh my gosh,
yes,
oh,
yes.
Whoa,
yes.
Form is emptiness and empty. I was reading Heart Sutra this morning. I'm like, whoa,
right. It's just,
oh my goodness.
You see, it's a nutshell of everything. No wonder they repeat it millions of times around the world every day.
But if you listen to that, it's almost like the sick joke before awakening, because you telling the ego self, oh, do this and do that and be perfect and do all this stuff and grasp all this stuff and get rid of yourself, which you can't do.
The mind can't get rid of the mind, can it?
No.
No. So it's and that's the reason, when a lot of times I would say most often, really, when I wake somebody up, when somebody wakes up in my presence, whatever, I help somebody, however you want to put that. I say that because it's shorthand and it feels that way over here. I know better. I know there's no teacher. I know there's no teaching. I know there's no student. I can look in and see people come to my door and I look out, well, that looks like Bob and Carol, and they look awake. What are they doing here, right? And it's like when they're coming for a session, and then I go, well, take the money and credit and let them in, right? So it's, they're already awake when they get there. But this feeling for them and over here as well is that there is that build up and then there's an awakening event, which is simply the recognition of your true nature. But that, and now I've gotten off on another tangent. I don't know where I am again.
This is what these units are made to do. Because if you're a unit, if you're like the Post-it pad, you're made to be written on, and if you're the pen, you're made to write, and if you're meant to be asleep, you'll stay asleep. But these units were made to wake up, or not, or make up a little bit, or stroll back and forth, or whatever.
You're given it's like that pen. That pen has the potential to write, but until you pull the cap off, you got nothing, right?
It can't write without the enlivening awareness.
Right, and the experience, the so-called event of awakening, is pulling the top off that pen. You take it from potential into and help that potential move into actuality, so that awakeness comes to recognize itself. Attention is played upon attention long enough. Oh, I see.
What's really hilarious is that before I met you, I knew nothing about non-dual. I had zero experience with it. I met Eckhart Tolle. I'd heard of him. I listened to a lecture, but it just seemed to me like Buddhism with everything stripped out.
Right.
And so it just didn't take with me.
Mm-hmm.
But what I find hilarious about it is that, because you talk a lot about non-dual philosophy and all that, it doesn't affect me at all because I don't even know what it is really. I mean, I have a vague sense of it. Right. You're my Zen master.
Yeah.
Which is really hilarious.
Yeah, it is.
There's a real tradition of, normally you have a lineage and you're supposed to pass it down. Mm-hmm. But there's a tradition of self-enlightened people. Mm-hmm. It's perfectly part of that Zen lineage. So, and what you tell me, I was reading Nondual, who's a Korean, they call it Son, but it's Zen. Mm-hmm. And he talks about sudden awakening and gradual cultivation.
Yes.
Like 600 years ago.
It's exactly what we're doing.
And it's not like you found it and you're using it. You independently discovered it and it's manifesting through you.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And that's exactly what it is. The living method is nothing more than that, which is this immediate awakening and then the gradual cultivation. The way that this teaching came about was that was one night there was a vision, and I could see that all of the seekers from all of the traditions were lined up at the bottom of my stairs. I don't know how they fit in my living room, but they did. The vision. So which is what, and that vision is what we say in spirituality. That's the name for an hallucination. We call it that, right? So we call it a vision, and then it's holy. I see. It's a holy hallucination. So, and it was, and I was aware that I wasn't, I was aware that it was, quote, a vision. In other words, it wasn't a direct hallucination. I wasn't seeing it. There was some combination in seeing it and it being in my mind's eye. I can't explain it. At any rate, but I could see that there was this huge field of all the seekers from all the traditions, and they were at the bottom of my stairwell, and enlightenment was at the top of the stairwell on the landing. And that they were down there and they were, they wanted enlightenment, but they were just in darkness and confusion. Literally, there was darkness. Plus, they were confused. And out of the sides of that darkness, there came came people from all of the great traditions. And they came out there and they said, "Oh, we remember, we remember what it was like when we were in darkness and confusion." And just awful. And so we want to help you with that. These are good people. These are well-meaning people. These are people that are helpful. These are people that we need more of in order to have a better planet. Nonetheless. So I'm all for them. But what happens is they come out and they say, we know what it was like when we were in darkness and confusion, so we're going to help you. And the first thing we're going to help you with, you'll notice that we already have, is we're going to give you community. And from community, we're going to give you this love and support to help you on your journey to the landing. And and then what we're going to, so the first thing we're going to do after we initiate this love is that we're going to give you our books. We're going to share our literature. And dependent upon the tradition, you better believe what's in this literature. Right? If you know what's good for you. And if you don't, come to us and ask us, because we've got no end of opinions about what the truth is and what's in these books. In non-duality, they do not say that you have to believe what's in those books, but there is the strong implication that if you want to wake up, you better believe what's in the literature. And if you don't, come to us and ask. And then we're going to give you practices. We'll teach you how to meditate. We'll teach you how to inquire. We'll teach you how to dance. We'll teach you how to praise. We'll teach you how to, to chant and bow and scrape and do everything that we can do. And then what we're going to do is that eventually, see, by this process, we're going to, one step at a time, we're going to move you up the staircase to the landing, which is where enlightenment lives. And we hope it works for you, because it didn't work for us. And this is the truth of most spirituality, is that you have the unawakened leading the unawakened. It doesn't mean that...
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that, because I was thinking about this yesterday, and I'm like, all the groups I've been in, all the thing I've done, it's always the blind leading the blind.
It's always
when the blind lead the blind, they all fall in a ditch.
That's right.
Yeah. When you don't have an enlightened teacher, all the stuff, it's just like you're just running in circles.
You're running. It's a dog chasing its tail. Boom, 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 boom.
And you can either do it by yourself or you can do it in a group.
Makes no difference. Yeah, because the student with an unenlightened master is not a whole hell of a lot better off than the student without a master.
I think you're worse.
Without a teacher, yeah.
You're worse, because if you don't have a teacher, you can think, well, maybe I'll find a teacher.
Yes.
You have the option of being open to an awakened person. But if you find an unawakened person, you're like, well, I found it.
Yes.
And there is no awakening.
That's right.
And that's what's really bothersome about so much of this stuff, is that, well, that happened 2,000 years ago. Buddha woke up, or Jesus or whatever, but that doesn't happen now.
Yes.
And so what we have to do is, do good works, or, whatever, be good, be nice. That's it. So much of it just
be nice. That's right.
Boils down to be nice, and be a liberal Democrat or be a Republican or whatever, and then you'll be okay. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Right.
And you look around and say, where's the spirit? Where's the awakening? And when we're skeptical about awakening, that it even exists, that's really, really dangerous, I think.
I can remember a guy, and I've worked with people, who were not totally sold. I get that, but I remember, this is several years ago, a guy in California wrote me, and he said, I think I want to book a session with you, although I'm highly skeptical, because I wrote him back, and I said, well, I really don't think we can work together, but thank you. And for your interest in my work. And it just blew him away, because he expected me to give him some kind of sales pitch. Pull it, rope him in. Right?
Yeah, right.
And I said, no, I can't. And he wrote me back, and he was just crushed. And he said, so why is that? And I said, well, this is hard enough. Doing what I do is hard enough without having to counter open skepticism like
that. Exactly.
Because that skeptical on that level, that's not skepticism, that's cynicism.
Right.
It can't work with cynicism. It won't work with cynicism.
Plus, as a sales technique, you did the slap takeaway.
Yes, which
the slap takeaway.
Yeah.
Slap takeaway is like, well, sorry, I'm not going to sell this to you.
Yes, that's
they
right.
want it.
Yes,
but if they don't want it, they're not going to get it.
Right. And
so it's true, and it's sales technique at the same time.
It works. The difference is that I really didn't meet with this guy. The slap takeaway.
That didn't work.
Back to do the if you
pointless,
open your mind, because it's pointless. There's no way it could be, or the odds of it being successful are very, very low. And the whole point is, if I say that I can wake up, I'm languaging here, and I can wake up a high percentage of people who talk to me do wake up, then that sounds really great from that view. But I can tell you that when I first started out with the living method 4 years ago, And I mean, right from go, I was waking up like 50%, which was far higher than I ever imagined. I mean, I thought if I became a teacher and I woke up half a dozen people, that would be an incredible Buddha-like teaching coming from this, right? Half a dozen. And then, but and that sounds wonderful to wake up 50%, but that's if you're not the guy who's hung with the 50% who didn't wake up.
Yeah,
because
right.
that's a bitch. It's half. The other half is victory, and everybody's smiling and laughing and crying and gratitude and all this stuff. But on the other thing, it's like, well, and I quickly saw that it was brutal on me. You see that? So
Right.
But fortunately, that was, I mean, because I didn't cook up any methodology. I just noticed that there was one laying around. It began when I started writing Beyond Recovery, and I had to divide everything up into 12 steps, 12 different things. Then I saw, oh my God, you got a method here. I didn't know there was a methodology here. I knew that people had been waking up around me for a couple of years, but I didn't know why. And then when I looked at this, I said, oh, I see, you're actually got a method. So that's when I started teaching, and it was great, but it was only so skillful and only 50%. So even as the odds went higher, I'm still hung with those who don't wake up, and it takes a tremendous amount out of the unit. You know, I can remember I was on Back Gap, and Rick was talking about, well, when I do my interviews, I get real energized, you know, and this, that, and the other. And I was like, well, yeah, because you're interviewing people, and I'm waking them up. There may be. I love Rick. I'm not saying anything there.
No, he's not waking people up, though.
But he's not. But he would be the first to tell you that that's not the process. That's not the purpose of his interviews. And maybe making people up out in the field who are watching interviews who get there's the missing link, and they get it. But there's a huge energy transfer. When I look back at those early awakening sessions that were just incredibly unskillful, God bless anybody. By the time I got to you, there was some skill, right? There was a reasonable amount of skill. By the time I got to you, I was waking up maybe 70%, or I think I used to say 3 out of 4, round it off because it sounded better. But in calculation, I think it was closer, because I used to keep score, just trying to find out what's going on here. I couldn't fathom how this was happening. You know, that everybody else thought I was a fraud. You should have taken it from these shoes. I knew I was a fraud. I knew I couldn't do this, right? I'm taking over the conversation. I don't mean.
Well, I was going to say that, you know, the key, it's funny because as a lawyer, I do a lot of these, what I call litigation campaign, and I win, but that's because I cheat, because I don't wait for the client to come to me. I go out and decide what issues I want to raise. I advertise in a sense by having, you know, website and news stories. People come to me and I screen the cases. I get the people and I take them up. So I'm very careful on what I take. And so I have a high success rate.
And I do the same thing. I cherry pick. Part of the you know, what's the reason I didn't take that guy from California? You look like a loser to me. That's where this all started, which is the fact that I don't like to talk to people if I'm going to have to be at the end of the day. Now, it just turns out that my preferences don't count, but it feels like they count. And so I'm cherry picking just my fees alone. My fees are not small. I've caught flack about those now for years, and will continue to take flack on them as long as there are people who are sticking to the belief that this should be free. I notice it's not, right? So how do you figure it should be? But those fees help me cherry pick. I don't get anything but serious. When I was doing, one of the reasons that I wake up more people now, there's some skillfulness to it, but there's also simply that I get a higher quality of client or student, because when it was $50 for me to do this with you, well, roll the dice. It's $50. God Almighty, I've been struggling for years. Maybe even this idiot can help me. But when it's $250 for 90 minutes, then it's like, well, gee, that seems like a lot of money for not too much time. Screw that my doctor's visit costs $600. That's something that's legitimate. This is spirituality, and it ought to be free. And I think he's a con man anyway. There's all of that worked into that idea that this should be free. It's the perfect thing for the ego.
I was going to say, exactly.
This should be free, and if it's not, I'm not going to participate.
Right.
Okay. That's fine. Good luck.
How do we get out? You're screening you. I was going to say that, the skillful, one of the things, again, legal that I've learned is that when I do a case for one person, it always benefits thousands, because what I'm trying to do is take it up to the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeals and make precedent. So I don't just take what comes to the door and let the people find the problem for me. I'm out there screening it, setting it up, and then I have a high rate of success, and that breeds success. Since I had these cases, I won the Supreme Court. All of a sudden, I've been invited to the law school. I've been invited to do these lectures. I'm doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
And, that's like, there's all this, the flower had to grow underground for a long time before it popped out.
Yes. And now you can.
And now it's popped out, and, oh, look, a flower. He's the guy,
That's right. That's exactly right. It's just like if is that for a long time, all I could do was shout, I really can do this. But I had nothing backing me up other than maybe once in a while I got it with, at the beginning, there was nothing backing me up, period. Other than the fact that somebody would wake up, but they didn't necessarily send me a letter. I couldn't do a video with them, 5-minute testimonial and put it on the website. Look, this guy really woke me up. So I was basically working against the tide of fraud. Now, in the same way that you're talking about, you go to testimonials, your finger will get tired as you go scroll down the screen looking at these successful things. So it does grow, it grows itself. Success breeds success, because you get people, they come to me now, because I approach every session. I know that I'm, quote, not supposed to have any expectations, or then I'm not also supposed to care whether anybody wakes up or not. I do come to it's the measure of my own blindness, of my own of my own unconsciousness, because I come to an awakening session. I'm not married to the idea, but I do care. I want that person to wake up, because that's me, right? And I know I want to wake up over there, because I don't mess with this thing usually until I'm ready to wake up. So I come to it with the assumption that you're going to wake up. People used to come to me with the assumption that they were not gonna, but they were gonna try. It's a Hail Mary pass. Now I get it when there's still 2 minutes in the game. It doesn't have to be the Hail Mary pass, the last play that said, I'll call this guy earlier on. So it breeds a higher quality of student, and I just look sharper and sharper, which is not, that was true up to a point, but
I got to you as fast as I could.
And everybody does.
And but I feel like I was exceptionally, I'm 53. I didn't start becoming a seeker till I was 26.
Yeah.
And I did the Sufi stuff, and I did, it was all necessary. But when it's funny, because you'll say, well, have you woken up yet? You're in the spiritual tradition. Has it woken you up?
Yes.
And I'm like, there you go. It's true, practical. You bought the pen, and is it writing? That's what it's for, right?
No, but I'm told that if I keep trying this, that it will. The ink will just automatically leak out of the pen through the cap.
Yeah, right. I haven't taken the pen up.
Yes, that's right. And it's just, that's the greatest measure that I can think of. And I'm not the only teacher who will say this, but it's not probably bandied about a whole lot, which is that take a look at your tradition. Are you waking up? Are you awake? Have you been in this tradition 10 years? And if you're not, it may not be what you can hear. But most especially, way before that, take a look and see if other people are waking up. And if other people are really and truly coming to authentic non-dual awakening, then it's a good place then you're in the right line for dinner, or you're in the right line for the movie. But if there's no one waking up at the head of the line, don't get in the back of that line, right? Because what happens is, and Adyashanti talks this about his witnessing of this early on, which is the idea is that what we do is that we settle, and it's the worst thing that we can do, which is, well, there's not going to be an awakening. I'm not even sure there really is anything called awakening. But I noticed, but I have a wonderful lifestyle now, a bunch of nice friends. and I'm much more at peace than I was 20 years ago. That's death. That's spiritual death, is that settling. It may be a better relative experience, a better dream. It's a better dream than you used to be having. But do you want a better dream, or do you want to wake up?
And it's
a lot of people that want the better dream.
Yeah, right. Well, I was just going to say, it's like, and it's not to belittle the function of stuff, because, you think of, passing, it can be like a nursery school. It can be like a waiting room. But you don't want to spend all your time in the waiting room. Waiting room, you wait for an hour. You don't spend the whole of your life sitting in the waiting room.
Right.
But that isn't to say it's worthless. Because I get that sometimes. Oh, this is, it didn't get them what they wanted, so it's a totally worthless tradition or whatever. And it's
no. Because this, just like this teaching can't exist unless there are people who are ready for it. But not everybody's ready for this. This is not everybody's teaching. This is the teaching for the people, it's two ends of the same stick. This teaching can't exist unless there's people who are ready for it. There can't be students who are ready for it, and this teaching not exist. It's two halves of the same thing. But it's not the two halves. It's not the other half of all things. It's not, there are people that need whatever pattern, whatever they're in, whatever tradition they're in. How do we know? They're in it. Right? And they're in it until they don't, aren't.
The thing that's useful about the Zen, I think, is that they've kind of been there, done that, and they'll write about it. Yeah. So like Rinzai, I'm in the Soto Zen tradition. Rinzai, they're like very big on Wake and Kensho. They're like, you need to have this initial awakening experience and then go back and work on it. Just like that. Like I said, and that's nice to hear that, as opposed to expecting that there's going to be fireworks and then you're going to be a Buddha.
That's what I thought, and that's what I think most of us think, that are not in a Zen tradition. The other thing is that when you have an awakening, like in 92, when I had my first big glimpse, right? It wasn't the end of the deal, but neither was not 2006. But anyway, it was a much shorter awakening. It was still authentic. I got it, but I didn't keep it. When in my case, I thought I got it. And in 2006, I thought I got it all. If I had been part of a tradition, if I had been in Zen and had an awakened teacher, they would have said, "Oh, go sit some more." Right? I mean, it just.
Well, I don't want to oversell Zen, because they're sort of the attitude of like, well, I don't have it, and there isn't anything there a lot of times. I found it. I've sat and then I did a lot of reading, yes. But that stuff's not out, and you can't understand it properly.
No.
That's the problem. It's there, but you really have to dig for it.
It's there.
Not as if you go to a Zen center or a temple and they're going to be, they're all awakened and all that. I had to come to you because I wasn't able to find an awakened teacher in my tradition. They're probably there,
but we're just saying that
I couldn't find them.
Yeah, they're not.
And that's the thing. It's funny though, because you're coming from the Advaita and the Zen, and you've got the non-dual. My sense of it's sort of like regrafting. You've got these roots that aren't putting up any more shoots, and you're putting this vitality and life back onto those roots. And they have a function to serve that life and that vitality.
Yeah.
That's their function.
When I was, the way you speak of the vitality in life it reminds me when I was, those early awakening sessions, when there was really no skill here. I didn't even know what I was doing. I just knew that there was something that I was doing here, but I had no elaborated process. I just knew that I was asking certain questions and this and that and the other. But there was not a lot of skillfulness. There was not a lot of, I was stable. There was a certain degree of clarity, but nothing compared to now. It's been 10 years later. I worked with hundreds and hundreds of people. So, and spent thousands of hours in session. Gee whiz, that'll clean up even a blind spot. Give them enough time, I'm just an old huckster that's figured out I can't stay awake unless I'm in the company of others. Pay for it. I can't afford it. But what was happening was because I would get up and I would do acts. Like a play. I would do, like a play and play more than one role in a play, or, like how about this? How about that? How about this? How about that? Like, even put myself on this side of the screen as one guy and put myself over here as another. I would yell at people very unskillfully, not recommended. Not, just not, it's not even something I wouldn't, but it's what happened. That's all I can say. It's not like I was thinking this up as I went. It was what was happening. You're hearing conditioning fire.
Right, exactly.
To meet circumstance. There's a mailman or a mail in the yard, and the dogs are not thinking to respond to that. It's just conditioning arising to meet circumstance. It's pure conditioning. And that's the same thing that was happening with me, was I had no idea how to do this, but I could not do it. So I would yell, I would scream, I would curse, I would do anything I could. And the remarkable thing is that about 3 out of 4 times it would work. I can remember a guy who's actually well known in our community. He owns an organization that's, I'm not going to talk about it, but the part of, well, I don't know why the hell not. He would tell you about it. So anyway, the guy that owns Meeting Truth, co-owns Meeting Truth, the website. And I was working with him, and I had, by that time I had some skill, but not great skill. And it was really that first summer that I was still doing it, and it was only, and I just beat him to death in that same way, because a tired ego is an open ego, just like a laughing ego is an open ego. And I beat him to death, and it was on the 3rd hour of our awakening session that suddenly awakening occurred over there. I had done everything, and was at the end of my quiver, and fortunately, how could it be any other way? At that point, he woke up, but he woke up like LSD trip, right? He wrote me about it the next day. I'm sure I still have it. It's probably on the website. So I'm sure it's on the website somewhere. And it was total boom, 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 boom. And it should be noticed, by the way, that I have another letter from him, which is because that ego came in same as it did for Fred, so to speak, which is the same as it did here. Ego came back in, and there was a unit overwhelm. And that bright awakening after a few weeks began to dim, and we met again. We had another awakening session. He woke up again, and as far as I know, he's never gone out of that clarity since, right? But last I checked, he was quite awake, so I would assume he is now. I think his wife's a teacher now, but he may be doing some too. I don't know. I don't check up on him anymore. But it was the blundering through. That's what I was doing. I was blundering through until the magic happened.
Partly this, though, because it's just being in your presence. We'll sit and have conversations about website design, or whatever, and that will tune me.
And that's the case now, but it wasn't the case 10 years.
I think it probably, because it wouldn't happen if you hadn't woken up. You would do all the same stuff.
Right. That's exactly.
And without the presence of that awakening.
And how do I know that's true? Because in 2010, I had been awake for 4 years, but nobody around me had actually woken up. And in 2010, I can promise you that from my end, at least, I continued to say exactly the same thing that I had been saying for 4 years, except that people started waking up around me. But Betsy came to a different level of awakeness, a real live, kind of awakeness versus just latent awakeness working through that unit. And my dear friend, and still to this day, landlord, he was the first guy that woke up in the room with me. I've been talking to this guy for, let me see, in 2006. When did he wake up? 2010. I'd known this guy for 10 years. He had been following me, so to speak, in recovery as a sponsee for 10 years. As far as I know, I didn't say anything really different. But where it was coming from, not only an awakening, but only when there was, I love the way that I'm going to write something about it that I read this week from a Chan master, and he was writing the introduction to some Chan poetry, which was, is that the way it's pronounced, Chan? You would know.
Chan, John, something like that.
Chan, whatever.
Yeah, right.
Chinese Zen.
Right.
And it was, and he said, that these poems were not written until these masters had achieved thorough enlightenment. And I love that, because we never use that. We very rarely use that in non-dualities. There's this idea that you pop and you're there. And that was my idea too, but it's not the case. I've never seen that to be the case. I've seen people wake up in an awakening session and never lose touch with who they are, but it's not a straight, but there's still a great deal of confusion as they clear.
I had two thoughts. One was that, again, I've read this stuff and like they'll talk about the infinite levels. So I can read the sutra stuff and I see that, oh, that's what they're saying. So I can say, well, maybe I won't be just woken. Maybe the wake up isn't just one thing. Maybe because they'll talk about 20 levels of the bodhisattva.
Yes.
So like, all right. So that's, again, useful to know.
Yes.
Or like you saying, when you wake up, you're going to run around and want to proselytize everybody. And like, oh, it's good. Somebody told me that. Yeah. So I don't have to you've made the mistakes. If you can learn from your own mistakes, it's great, but learn from other people's mistakes.
A bloody clearing process. Bloody awakening. I had to be in the worst situation almost imaginable. One of the terrible situations in order for awakening to occur. And then there is that I had no teacher, I had no money, and I had no humility, so that I couldn't possibly go out and find somebody who would talk to me for free, because what do they know? I'm the one that's awake. You can't, there's the arrogance was just right there. So for 3.5 years, I went around by myself making all the mistakes possible. And then in 2010, funny how that works. The same year that people started waking up with me, in January of 2010, I had a conversation with Adyashanti on the telephone, in his radio show. And then he and I had another one, and that was wonderful. And then he and I had a third one in August when he was in Asheville. And then, but in between the second and the third one, I went and got Scott Killaby and quote, hired him to be my spiritual teacher. Again, there was tremendous arrogance on my part because Scott Killaby woke up after I did. And that shouldn't be that he was my teacher. But he woke up more clearly. When I bought the reflections of whatever his book is, of the daily reflections thing, Valley Press sells it now. And I was just bowled over by the clarity that was coming through that, And clearly there was clarity there that wasn't here. So I no longer gave a shit if he woke up yesterday. I knew this guy could help me, and indeed he did. From the first conversation on, there was tremendous change, and I'm be grateful to Scott Killaby for which is no other than myself, but I'm still grateful to Scott Killaby till the day I die, because he was the perfect guy, and one of the reasons he was the perfect guy, oddly enough, is that he was a lawyer too, and he understood my legal situation. He understood where I was and helped me see that yes, there's the story. It's terrible. It's just awful. Do you notice that it has nothing to do with you? Right? And it was, and by that breakthrough, I got stable with him in that first conversation. He was Killaby was the first person that taught me, let's actually do something and not just talk.
Yeah.
He took me through inquiry, and I was able to see that through these eyes. I could see it myself. And there was a shift into stability, and it never went away. So so hats off to teachers, even though there is no teaching. I
was going to say, and one thing you said to me, and it really hit me just very strongly right now, is that the biggest problem here is wanting to be right.
Yes.
And that's just sort of like, oh my God, it's all this knowledge and all this experience and all this intuition and all this great stuff is wonderful, but the ego has as much access to it as awareness.
This is one of the
reasons to come in and I'm right.
Yes, this is one of the reasons that when you sometimes, I wake up people that have been with 20, 30, 40 years in non-duality, but I usually will wake them up the first time that they're with me because I come at them with a new presentation. But if they wake up with me during that time, and then if that awakeness is overcome by unit overwhelm or whatever, the odds are actually very good that I can wake them up if it goes back. They go back to sleep, so to speak, that I can bring them back to conscious awakeness. I can bring unconscious awakeness back into the state of conscious awakeness very quickly and very easily. But there are cases where I can't, and this is where there's a lot of context. Somebody who's been there in this for a long time, and they know. And when I tell them that cup is already full, And when I start working with them, I've heard this before, I know this, I know that, and it's that I'm right syndrome. And even if they're trying very hard, it's just a conditioning that will no longer be able to hear this until it does, or it may never be able to hear it again. I can tell you
the danger of it.
I was an Eckhart Tolle devotee for 4 or 5 years, something like that. But, I mean, to just an unhealthy degree. And yet there was a time I remember, and the Power of Now was like a Bible, right? And then I remember a few years after that, I picked up the Power of Now. It was still on my bedside. I just hadn't read it in years. And I picked it up and looked at it, and it was just like gobbledygook. It's like, what is he saying? I mean, I can't follow this at all. Now I could pick it up probably and understand it again. But you go through these periods where you just can't hear it. Stillness Speaks has not done that. I mean, I don't think I ever picked up Stillness Speaks by Eckhart and couldn't feel that awakeness. But that was a vast AM radio that reached many, many people.
Right.
For me, Adyashanti was FM radio, right? Which is where it reached not so many people, but much more deeply.
And you're the laser beam. You're the laser beam.
I'm the laser beam where everything's cut out.
Tight, but just that, it's just.
It just definitely doesn't work for everybody. But I noticed that it seems to have an uncanny ability to work for the people who are drawn to it. So if they come to me, their odds are high. But if they, but that doesn't. But it just is. But that's happenstance. It doesn't mean that because there's no teacher here. It doesn't mean that I've become a really, really good teacher. It means that the process has just honed itself so that there's a lot of happy endings. So this has been wonderful, but I think we've passed our hour. We're going to have to talk again. Okay.
Yeah, wonderful.
So it's just tremendous. I love talking to you. We talk every week. I love it every time. And sometimes we even get to the point where we're talking about spirituality.
Once in a while.
A lot of times it's just
my buddy.
It's wonderful to see you. Wonderful to be with you. Thank you so much. I appreciate this great favor.
All right.
Thank you.